Hello everyone, my name is Jonathan House, and today we're going to make a short song in Logic Pro with EastWest sounds. If you've seen any of my previous videos, I've made music on an iPad Pro with BeatHawk instruments, but lately I've moved on to a MacBook Pro with Logic. Now there are so many digital instruments to choose from when working in a DAW or digital audio workstation like Logic Pro. I found EastWest, and compared to others, I just like what I get from them. The quality of their instruments and ease of use really fit with my style of music and workflow. Today, we'll be creating a short song using specifically the Hollywood Fantasy Orchestra pack and a couple of native instruments from Logic Pro. There are two ways to get access to these instruments from EastWest Sounds, a purchase or subscription. I purchased this pack for $200 at the time. The price changes quite a bit, so be on the lookout for that. I've also tried the Composer Cloud subscription, and it's an amazing deal if you want to access all the instruments for around $20 a month. The Hollywood Fantasy Orchestra pack is basically an entire orchestra in one pack. It has pretty much everything you need to create orchestral music, from strings to brass to woodwinds, choirs, voices, percussion. It really is an entire orchestra in one pack, and that's what we are going to be using today. Now, this is not meant to be a beginner's tutorial on how to use Logic Pro, but if you're new to it, I hope to make this easy to follow along as I'll explain a few things about it along the way. For this tutorial, you'll need Logic running on a Mac, obviously, the Hollywood Fantasy Orchestra pack from EastWest, either purchased or through a subscription, some sort of MIDI keyboard or MIDI controller, and optional are a sustain pedal and speakers. Okay, let's dive right in. So when you open Logic Pro for the first time, you're going to see this pop-up window here of 4 choices: MIDI, pattern, drummer, and audio. We are going to layer tracks on top of each other. So for the first track, we are going to select MIDI, and under the instrument, you'll see that Opus is already selected and the Open Library is already checked. Now, just for reference, if Opus has not been checked already, you can click this drop-down menu, go down to AU Instruments at the bottom, select EastWest and Opus. We're going to keep the Open Library check the same. We're going to keep the audio output the same. And let's begin. Click Create. Now, when you click Create, it's going to open this window, and this is the Opus engine. This is how you get access to your EastWest instruments. So right away, when you see this window, nothing is appearing. So let's go to Browse. And when I click on Browse, I see my purchased Hollywood Fantasy Orchestra right here down at the bottom. And we have brass, we have the orchestrator, which is another great tool we'll go over in another video. We have percussion, strings, voices, and winds. So I think for this song, I'm going to start off with my first track being some sort of a horn or a brass section maybe. So let's go to flugelhorns and let's try out some of these samples. Now with these samples, you can just click once. It's going to play a short note of what that instrument sounds like. Double click that instrument to activate it for your current track. I can spend hours just sampling all of these sounds. They're just simply amazing. They sound exceptional. When you select one, you'll see a short paragraph on the top right of this window, and that just describes the instrument and how it's used. Okay, so I think I'm going to go with this flugelhorn legato slur. Now this is a great instrument. I've used it before, but because it's legato, it's only one note at a time. So you can't press down on 2 keys on your keyboard at the same time. You're only going to get one note. But what that slur does is if you press one note, and then while that key is still being held down, press the other key for your next note, it's going to morph or slur into the second note. So it creates this very natural performance that you would hear from a real life musician. All right, so let's double click on this and let's go to play up here. And now this is your main user interface for the instrument that's selected. And you'll see at the bottom of the keyboard, you have your range of that instrument. That's so helpful. So I love that it highlights only the range for that instrument. Now you'll also notice on the top left of this UI, there's a mood. You could do soft, classic, or epic. And really this changes the velocity and the performance of that instrument, playing a soft, a regular, or a loud blast in this case. Choosing a mood for these instruments really just depends on what kind of mood we're going for in our song. If you want a very loud, fast song, you might want to choose epic. We're going to go for a softer song, so we're going to probably stick with soft or classic here. But it's fun to just try them out. They all sound great. And a gold star for you for anyone who recognizes this theme. All right, I'm pretty happy with this instrument. I'm going to close this window and let's get started. A really quick overview on the UI before we start recording. This button here is your library button, and it shows or hides this far left column. I usually don't have this open, but this just toggles that on and off. And I always love to keep this quick help option activated. This is great because in real time, as soon as you hover your mouse over anything in Logic Pro, this little dialog box here is going to basically explain what that does. It's super helpful, and it's really helped me learn Logic Pro pretty quickly. Okay, so I have my MIDI keyboard plugged into my MacBook Pro. I'll be using that to record. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's going to work. I hope you notice some of the legato slur performance that you get from that instrument. Sounds great. However, it's still a little flat, so my keyboard comes with a knob that you can adjust as you're playing. And the great thing about Logic Pro, it recognizes most of these keyboards that have this kind of adjustment knob. Instead of re-recording this track, I'm going to start from the beginning, click record, and I'm not going to press any keys, but I'm just going to adjust this expression wheel on the keyboard to adjust the velocity of my instrument. And we're going to try and mimic an actual performance here. Because we want some of those little nuances, those little, not imperfections, but just a more natural sound. Listen to this and you'll get an idea. So right now I'm holding down a note and I'm adjusting my expression wheel on my keyboard. Okay, so I'm going to click record and look at this graph, this bar graph that's showing up on my recorded track. It's not replacing the notes, but it's now recording that velocity data. And that's exactly what we want. Okay, that sounds really good. I'm pretty happy with that. So a good tip is when you're recording, go ahead and master this as you go. Let's add effects, let's do some mastering, because as you're creating the song, you get a really good sense of what the finished product is going to be, what the finished recording is going to be. So mixing and mastering along the way is very important in my opinion. So let's go to this left column here, the far left column. We're going to click in this audio effects box. And let's go to Chromaverb in stereo. And right here, we're going to add a little bit of reverb to this track. So on the top here, you can click on room, and I think we're going to choose theater. And to adjust the reverb, let's go down to this dry and wet section here. So the more wet a sound is, the more reverb effects you're going to get in it. So we're going to increase one and decrease the other. And let's play it back and see how it sounds. And I love this little animation. That's pretty cool. All right, that sounds pretty good. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so I actually forgot to save this. Let's go ahead and save this song really quick. Okay, let's save it to the desktop. We'll just call this tutorial 1. All right, so going back to mixing and mastering here, on the second column on the far left, that's your stereo out. And in this column, the effects applied to this column affect the overall song. So not just the individual track like what we did a few minutes ago. So let's go and click on this mastering button here. And that's going to bring up this window here. It's going to analyze our song so far. But yeah, so this mastering window is a really quick and easy way to get your song to sound a little louder, a little more clear, a little more polished. We're going to adjust the spread so it's more in the middle. Okay, that's pretty good for now. So we might come back to that, but let's add our second track. So we're going to click this little plus icon here. That's going to bring up options for our second track. So you have your 4 choices here. We're going to stick with MIDI. And we're going to, instead of doing Opus, we're going to select Empty Channel Strip. Now this allows us to select all of the built-in instruments within Logic Pro. So we're going to add a piano here. So let's search for piano. And some of these down here actually sound really good. So let's click this one and let's test and see how it sounds. All right, I think that's good. I think we're going to stick with that. And let's go ahead and apply some reverb to it. Make it sound a little fuller, a little more epic, I guess. And before I record, I like to practice a little bit with the first track just to make sure I know what I'm playing when it comes to recording. Okay, I kind of like that. That sounds good. All right, let's go ahead and record. Click the record button. Okay, and as I'm recording, you're seeing this angular bar graph that's going up and down. That's Logic Pro reading every time I press down on the sustain pedal on my keyboard. So that's all that is. All right, so I like how that sounds. Let's go ahead and click on the plus icon again. And let's go down, let's click the drop-down menu and go back to EastWest and Opus. And we have our Opus window pop up again. So let's go down to, I think we're going to add some strings, maybe some low bass or cello strings here. Try out this one. And right away, although this sounds great, the beginning of these notes are pretty harsh, and my song doesn't really match the mood of this performance. So we're going to make some adjustments here. So we need to adjust the beginning of these notes. It comes in a little too instant, I guess. And the great thing about EastWest and Opus is the UI are just amazing when it comes to adjusting the attack, the hold, the decay, the sustain, the release, all that stuff. All those little knobs you see there under that graph, we're going to adjust some of those. All right, so let's bring back the attack, and that's basically the beginning of the note, the beginning of each note. So we want it to fade in slightly, but not too slow. But we don't want that really harsh beginning. Okay, that sounds pretty good. I'm liking where that's going. All right, so I think I'm ready to record. Let's go ahead and click record. All right, that sounds good. Let's add a little bit of reverb to this as well. And one note on reverb, you can add reverb to individual tracks, or you can add reverb to the entire song after you've recorded it in that stereo out column where we did mastering. I personally like to add reverb to each individual track because there might be some instruments where I want a little bit less or a little bit more, but you know, it could just be down to preference, but that's just how I like to do it. All right, I'm liking how that sounds. Let's go ahead and click the plus sign again. And let's go and add another string section here. So we added our deep bass section, but I want a more mid violin section here. So let's see what they have here. We'll go to long. And maybe this one. That sounds pretty good. And again, I can play for hours on just sampling these. They sound really good. Let's try the soft mood. Okay, that sounds pretty good, but like before, the beginning comes in a little too fast, so we're going to adjust the attack a little bit. And let's adjust that curve as well. That sounds a lot better. Okay, that sounds pretty good, but right now let's go ahead and add some reverb to this. All right, let's try it with the other three tracks that we've recorded. All right, I think that sounds pretty good. Let's go ahead and record it. Okay, let's solo this track so we can hear it without the other instruments. I want to make some adjustments here. sounds good. Let's adjust the volume a little bit. Okay. All right, now I'm going to go up here and click on this pencil icon. And this brings up the MIDI notes for every single note I pressed in that performance. So I just noticed that my expression wheel on my keyboard is not changing the velocity or the loudness or softness of my performance. So I'm going to enter that in manually, and it's really easy to do that. Let's click on this little graph button here. And let's go ahead and click on this mouse icon, and let's click on the pencil tool. We're going to draw in our own line graph. And with my mouse, I'm going to click and drag how I want this expression to go. And again, I'm clicking and dragging to draw out the loudness and softness of this performance. So the strings will fade in a little bit. There's going to be a little bit of articulation and nuance in the middle, and it's going to fade out at the end. Okay, that's already sounding a lot better. It doesn't sound as flat. It sounds a little bit more natural, which is what we want. And I'm going to do that same thing for track number 3 for the bass track that we recorded. I'm going to do the same thing there. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. That sounds good. Now let's add another track here. Let's click on the plus button. We're going to stick with Opus, and this time we're going to go to the Voices section. EastWest has an amazing library of solo voices and choirs. And we're going to use one of those in this track. So let's go to Legato and choose this one. And again, at the bottom we have our range. But just like the horn instrument we used in our first track, the performance between two notes, when I press down on the first note and then hold that down and press down on the second note, you're going to get this really great transition from one note to the next. And again, with other instruments, you have your mood, soft, classic, and epic. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of reverb to this as well. All right, that sounds pretty good. All right, that sounds good, but I made one little mistake here. There's a note that I was a little late on, so let's go ahead and edit that. Instead of re-recording it, we're just going to edit the MIDI information down below. Okay, that sounds a lot better. Okay, let's go to our stereo out column again, and we're going to click on this open slot right under mastering, and we're going to add limiter. We really want to stay outside of the red because what you want to avoid is your song getting too loud, and at a certain audio level, it's going to clip the top end of that song and bring the volume down a little bit. It sounds really gross. And I'll probably do another video just on this. But for right now, we're just going to bring this down probably at negative 1.5 dB. And so now if you'll notice at the bottom left, we're getting just barely any red and we're really capping out at the yellow. And that's more what we want here. So we can still adjust these volume knobs on the individual tracks. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And again, this is all preference. I'm doing this based on what I want more prominent in my song. So let's bring up this mastering window. And let's click this Excite button. That just brings the sound a little more forward. We're going to increase that a little bit. All right, that's sounding really good. I like where that's going. Let's add another track here. Okay, for this track, I want to add a horn section here. And I won't be using a legato performance, so I want to press multiple keys at the same time. So let's go ahead and find one here. These tubas are a really great sound. Let's try that. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. All right, and there's something else you're going to notice as I'm recording right now, and I am using my sustain pedal, so you're getting that vertical and horizontal bar graph, but I'm also adjusting the expression from my keyboard with the expression wheel, and you're getting a little bit of soft and loud performances in one recording, which is great. And for our final track here, let's go ahead and add some percussion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a cymbal swell, which is a Logic Pro instrument. And over here in the search bar, let's search for swell. And there it is. So I'm going to click on that, and one click will activate it. Here's how it sounds. All right, let's hit record and record it. All right, I think my timing was a little off, but that's okay. I can adjust this track here. I was a little early. I'm gonna bring it back and we'll see how it sounds now. All right, that sounds good. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of reverb to it. All right, I'm really liking how this song is turning out. Let's adjust a few more things here. So if you'll notice, the Logic Pro project is a lot longer than my song. So what we're going to do, I'm going to bring my mouse way over here at the end, and my mouse cursor changes into something else. You see that right there? We're going to click and drag all the way to the very end of our song. And now when we export this song, we're not going to get 10 minutes of dead audio at the end. All right, well, I think we are just about done. Let's go ahead and save it, and we're going to bounce this song, which is basically saving this song as an MP3 format, as a common audio format. So let's go to File and Bounce, and we're going to select Project or Section. Now, what I love about Logic Pro, and I'm sure other workstations do this as well, but you can bounce or export a song in multiple formats with just one click. So we're going to export this or bounce this as an MP3 and an M4A. And we're going to just make sure that the start and end of the bounce is the start and end of my project here in Logic Pro. So you can click these arrows or just click and drag. You also want to make sure that you select the highest bit rate. So let's select 320 here on both. And press OK. It's going to bring up a window on where to save it. I'm just going to save this to my desktop. And there you go. We have our song in 2 different formats. Let's minimize this and you'll see my 2 songs right there. And ladies and gentlemen, that is it. Thank you so much for following along with this tutorial. I really hope you got something out of it. And make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and the more likes and subscriptions I get, the more I'm able to do this type of content. So again, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one.